Let's get into Australia. Alan Quinlan is with us. Good morning to you, Quinny. How you doing?
Morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, so we're obviously talking about the World Cup here. Australia's first World Cup match is on at exactly the same time as the Ireland-Australia rugby match, but the game is nearly fully sold out on Saturday, so at least there's plenty of interest in the rugby.
Yeah, there is. The Rebels obviously play here in Melbourne. There's a lot of AFL is probably the biggest sport here, and there's rugby league here as well. A lot of tennis. So a lot of sports going on here. There was an AFL game on Monday, and there was 80,000 people at it. It was a holiday here on Monday. But yeah, it's been pretty quiet to build up this week here in Melbourne. Bits of scraps on the papers, but very small amounts compared to the other sports. But I think closer to the weekend with the press conferences today about Australia's and Ireland's, I think it's starting to ramp up the attention a little bit more.
And is the World Cup registering more than the rugby, or is it actually nothing but AFL?
It's nothing but AFL and NFL. The Origin is on again next week, State of Origin. The rugby only takes up a small bit of the paper, and it's not on the back pages. It's usually in a page or two to read the rugby story. So that doesn't surprise me. I've been here before. There's so many sports they're competing with here, but I think that's why it was so important that Michael Cheika's Australia got off to a good start last week to create a little bit of impetus, a little bit of attention. And it's amazing. We were, Australian training this week, the access you get to players, the totally relaxed attitude to, go and meeting the players. Even after the game, I went down pitch side after the game and I asked Chris Ford, the media manager for Australia, could I chat to one or two of the Aussies in the mix zone? And he didn't really know what a mix zone was. He said, what are you talking about? Grab anyone you want there and then. So they want as much attention and media stuff as possible. So I literally could have grabbed any player. I spoke to Israel Folau, Karevi, Michael Cheika, and it was nice just to see the reactions. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see if they lose at the weekend, will you be given the same access? But certainly they want as much media attention as possible, and they're fighting in the back pages to get some attention around the rugby.
Do the Aussies think they have this series sewn up, Alan?
I'd say they're confident, they don't lack in confidence, Australian people. I mean that respectfully. I think they kind of have a winning mentality and they believe that they should win in any sport they play. So I think they're confident. But I think Michael Cheika, look, he'll know the Irish mentality. He'll know there's going to be a reaction. He'll know the best team is probably, the strongest possible team is probably out this Saturday. The changes maybe didn't give that cohesion that Joe Schmidt wanted last week. So I think he's pretty shrewd, and he'd probably given those messages to the players. But I met the players earlier in the week coming through the airport. That you could just sense a massive relief from them that they won this test match. It's the first time in 46 tests that Michael, in his tenure as coach, has been able to pick an unchanged 23. So it'll tell you he's done a lot of chopping and changing, and there's been a lot of reaction to results and losses they've had and players available to him. So I think he's definitely looking for a bit of stability between here and World Cup. So it's a same 23 for Australia. I believe they'll be wary of Ireland, but I still think they'll be confident that they can do it again.
Yeah, just to bring everybody up to date on the Ireland team, so it's Cian Healy, Niall Scannell, Tyke Furlong is the starting front row. The second row is James Ryan and Devin Toner, Peter O'Mahony, Dan Leavy and CJ Stander. I presume Peter O'Mahony is the captain. It doesn't say it on the...
He is captain.
Yeah. Okay. And then it's Murray and Sexton, 9 and 10. The wings are Andrew Conway and Keith Earls. Fullback is Rob Carney. And then it is the Leinster partnership of Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose at 12 and 13. The standout issue really is Niall Scannell is picked at 2 and Rob Herring is picked as the replacement hooker. So no Sean Cronin from the bench. Jack McGrath, Andrew Porter, Tyke Byrne is uncapped, obviously, and will hopefully make his debut appearance for Ireland in this game. Jordy Murphy retains his place in the bench, so no Jack Conan. John Cooney comes in, so no Kieran Marmion. Joey Carberry obviously stays in the bench, and Jordan Larmour is now just a staple of the matchday squads, ahead of Jacob Stockdale, probably because of his versatility. So it's pretty interesting because we had assumed that Sean Cronin had done enough to re-establish himself as the number 2 in the Ireland setup. to Rory Best, but that clearly isn't the case.
Yeah, and you think last week, okay, it's given Rob Herring a chance to start, even though Sean Cronin probably would have been disappointed because I think he's only 11 starts in 62 test matches for Ireland, which, you know, he'd want to get more starts and really believes he's had a fantastic season. So I think he would have definitely been frustrated last week, but maybe more understandable. But this week he's not in the 23, so that certainly raises a few eyebrows. Joe Schmidt spoke about Niall Scannell. He's an admirer. He's a fan of Niall Scannell. He called him into the Six Nations in 2017. He started when Rory Best was ill for the Italy game. Did really well. He was on the bench for part of that campaign as well. So he likes him. And, you know, Joe, if he kind of takes a liking to a player, and it's those minute little details that he likes. If he sees good signs in a player, he tends to back them. Sometimes, Sean Cronin is obviously very, very elusive around the field. I think one of the concerns, Ger, is the scrum. Niall Scannell is a perceived strong scrummager, and I think losing that scrum last week against Australia for the penalty that put him ahead was a big moment in the game. Even though it's only one scrum that was bad, it's still that'll kind of live with that group of forwards, not just the guys who started, the guys on the bench, the other forwards within the squad. And from my own time and memories, if you had a bad scrum in a game for any team, any of the teams you were playing with, you want to get over that. You want to go out and make a statement. And I think they've probably gone with Niall Scannell. Number one, he's had a stop-start season with injuries with Munster, okay? But I think he believes that this guy can, is good enough to play. He's good enough to challenge for the starting berth. And he's someone who, come World Cup will trying to give him more experience. But if you're Sean Cronin, I'm not privy to the relationship. There's obviously some things that Sean Cronin does in games that maybe doesn't please Joe. He does a lot of good things when you look from the outside, and as I said, he's fantastic for Leinster. So certainly a few eyebrows raised.
Yeah, just on that scrum last week, because we didn't get a chance to talk to you about it. That was our first choice, ostensibly our first choice front row that had come off the bench. We're supposed to be fresh. We're supposed to be seeing the game out. So it will have been pretty hard for them to take. What was your read on what exactly happened? Because in the aftermath, the sense was, that scrum had wheeled. Certainly, the defensive nature of what Joe Schmidt was saying afterwards was, well, that should have been a reset. The whole thing had turned around, as opposed to the penalty for Australia. What was your read on it?
Well, most referees there will will reset that. I think Marius van der Westhuizen, he made some dubious calls for both sides last week. I think he was out of his depth. I think he was panicky. He got overawed a little bit by the situation. I just think Ireland weren't set properly, and Tom Robertson comes in. He's off the bench. He's listening to this conversation all week about Furlong and Healy are going to come off the bench for Ireland and make a massive impact. He comes off the bench there, and he's coming up against probably the best tight in the world in Tadhg Furlong. So immediately he has a goal. And I think just Ireland were a little bit high, moving their feet a little bit. I watched it a couple of times. There was a little bit of feet movement. And if you just get caught with one of those, Jared, then it's so hard to recover. And I think Australia spun around for sure. So it could easily have been a penalty to Ireland. You don't often see the loose head and the whole pack going around like that and they getting awarded the penalty. So it could easily have been a penalty the other way. I think because of that uncertainty, most referees will reset that scrum. But it was a big boost for Australia, and their bench, Latu came on, Tupou, young players who, like I said, were probably listening to this scenario all week that Ireland's first choice front row were going to come off the bench and win the game. So they're trying to fight down and nail down a jersey for themselves, and they were the ones who just got on the front foot. But that will live with you. It doesn't go away, Ger. Even if Ireland won the game last week, that one big scrum like that grows at a pack of forwards. And it's not just the front row. Collectively, the whole group need to be better this week.
One last thing about the World Cup and us being on the World Cup schedule. If you think back 12 months ago, Dan Leavy was the third choice at Leinster in terms of number 7. Now, it was a disaster that we didn't have him in the team last week to go up against Pocock. And you kind of see how quickly life changes. He's still only got 9 caps, and you know we kind of hear those cliches about how long it takes players to get up to speed at international level. He's booked all those trends. James Ryan has obviously also booked them, but like the whole notion that this is a closed situation at the moment, it's not. We shouldn't be thinking, right, this is the 15 that has to start when the big games happen in the World Cup in 18 months' time, because quite a lot can change between now and then, and Leavy is testimony to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got to remember Sean O'Brien is out injured. He's been so unlucky in the last 12 months. So Van der Fleer is injured. You know, Dan Leavy could have one bad game, or he mightn't play that well, and somebody else comes in. Jordy Murphy comes back in and plays a good game. That's the competitive nature of the amount of back rows. Jack Conan is chomping at CJ Stander. Ty Byrne could be an option at 6 if Peter O'Mahony doesn't play well. So that kind of competitive nature. But I think Leavy's consistency over the last 8-9 months has been phenomenal. You know, you think he came off the bench for, particularly the second half of the year, he came off the bench for Ireland and Paris, and he's been standout in all these games he's played. Really dominant, physical. Had a few bangs and knocks coming into the tour. I think that's why he wasn't involved last week. So I wouldn't expect Dan Leavy to go out at the weekend and follow Pocock and Hooper around the field. I think there's an onus on the 15 guys at any given time. And I even said this, they should probably have a buzzword when they see Pocock and Hooper, that somebody shouts it, that you just go with that extra bit of urgency to try and remove the threat. They're so good. It's out of respect to Pocock, Hooper. But you look, Leavy brings that bit of dog, doesn't he? He brings that bit of aggressiveness. And you know, Andy Farrell in particular, defensively, he'll be talking to his forwards this week about, number one, being more aggressive with their carries, and an onus on the ball carrier to have more of a fight, more of a leg drive, but also anyone entering the ruck, support players coming in, their urgency. Sometimes it's not about just you know, being stronger than the opposition. It's about urgency, technique. And on occasions, then technique goes out the window. It's just do or die, get in there and try and move someone out there. But Leavy brings that bit of doggedness, which is, it'll be interesting to see how he goes on Saturday.
One of the big questions for Saturday is how do Ireland lessen the impact of Israel Folau? Like, it seems that if we're going to stop
very
him,
simple, Owen, don't kick to him.
Don't kick to him.
That'd be a good start, wouldn't it?
Is it possible to kind of execute our kicking game by avoiding a fullback, or is it a minor tweak? Is it a major tweak that's going to be needed for Saturday?
Look, it's very difficult, and if you change up, Ireland's kicking game has been one of their strengths in a lot of games in the last number of years. In fact, they've been criticised for probably kicking too much at times. I don't want to see them kick the leather off the ball on Saturday. They're going to have to kick at times. They're going to have the exit out of their own 22. Conor Murray's box kicks can be very, very effective, and the kick chase. But I just think we lost that collision in the air. Okay, Folau, Rob Kearney hits him from the first kickoff. He hits him in the air, and Folau went down on his back, and it was a penalty. I'd nearly rather see a collision in the air than Israel Folau shooting in over people, winning the ball cleanly. And I just think there was occasions last week where we were waiting, and you could nearly sense that the player expected Folau to come and take the ball. You just got to get in the air. I would like to see Ireland kick and try and find a little bit of green grass and try and find a little bit of territory, and maybe move it 2 passes and put some grubbers, because their wingers come up very hard. And if Folau picks up the ball back in his own 22, where he has to pick it up and turn and run, well, then if he's a green wall in front of him, there's options and opportunities to tackle him and maybe turn the ball over. Tony McGahan said this to me last week I met him, and former Munster coach, of course, he knows all the Irish guys. He's coaching with the Rebels now. He said Folau is actually way more dangerous at taking the ball in the air, because he has an ability to jump out of the tackle like a gazelle and then take off, and there's a fractured defence. Whereas if you kick in behind him and find little corners and little pockets, that if you come up and there's 2 or 3 guys in front of him, instinctively he tries to take you on. Kicking is the last thing in his mind, and that you can get some reward out of that. So, look, I don't think they need to stop kicking. I just need to, number one, compete in the air a bit more aggressively, and number two, sometimes find a little bit of green grass or use the grubber option.
It's interesting that Conway comes in for Stockdale. Stockdale obviously out of the 23 as well. I'm really excited about seeing Conway get a sustained run of form. Sorry, a sustained opportunity to show his form in the starting 15, because the progress in his game over the last 18 months has been really sensational. And obviously Stockdale took his opportunity in the Six Nations, set a record number of tries scored. But what Conway brings is something very different, and he has a maturity and a defensive capability that no doubt you feel in the intermediate term is something that Joe Schmidt is looking for.
They're different players, aren't they? Stockdale, he's the ultimate poacher, all the intercepts he's got, good left boot, but he looked a little bit rusty last week, and I think it's probably maybe a little unfair, you can tell me, but Ian Henderson looked a little bit rusty. Bundy Aki at times, even though Aki played well and he punched some good holes, these are the guys that haven't played in a number of weeks, Ger, and you lose that little bit of couple of percent of your match fitness and it can affect you. Stockdale was kind of battered up a little bit, didn't train fully on Tuesday. He certainly didn't do the contact. But then you have someone like Conway who brings an incredible energy, pace, good footwork. He's good in the air. And, you just think you're talking about the Falau thing on. Conway isn't as big as Falau, obviously, but I guarantee you he'll be flying through the air and they'll probably collide both of them in the air. Falau still may win it, but that's what you want. And I think that's probably one of the reasons as well why he's come in, just to bring a real energy. And Joe likes him. I think he's improved immeasurably under Joe Schmidt, being in the squad. I think he's got a lot of confidence now that he can play at this level. And if you give him ball in space, his footwork is so good, he may pop up and score a try for you. So I think it's just a little bit of a break for Stockdale rather than being dropped. And I think that's the way Joe was explaining it. And look, these tours are like that. Players get chopped and changed. And I think you have to bring in a bit of impetus, and that's what he's expecting from Conway on Saturday. Yeah.
Brian O'Driscoll accurately predicted that Australia would win last week on the basis of the teams that were picked. You'd feel a bit more confident as an Irish rugby fan this week that we've got more of our ducks in a row and more combinations that we're used to seeing and a bit more game time for people like Robbie Henshaw, so you hope that he doesn't make the same mistakes as last week. What's your prediction for this week, Alan?
I'm more confident. To be honest, I was confident last week, Ger, and that was just basically down to Australia not having been together for a while and all their players playing Super Rugby last week. The week before, I just didn't think they could gel together. They adopted a bit of an old school approach, just rough Ireland up, slow them down, get in their faces, get off the line, be a bit cynical at times. And I love playing like that myself when I was there. Cheika would have been really... and I chatted to him after the game. He was delighted with the players, the way his players fronted up. Ireland had more possession, more territory. The one big standout is the 21 turnovers. It's very, very hard to win a test match. And they're not turnovers at the breakdown. They're loose kicks, drop passes, and a couple at the breakdown as well. So if they can tidy up and be more accurate with the ball and show us a team that we saw in the Six Nations who are really diligent, really cohesive, I think I'd be much more confident and get a result. The intrigue is, can Australia get better this week? The weather is not supposed to be good here in Melbourne. There's a storm coming in, wind, rain, sleet, snow even on some of the high ground around Victoria here. And so look, it's I'm more confident that we'll see the true Ireland side, and I think they'll definitely take it up a couple of notches. It's that angry reaction that you would expect, and I think I'd be confident they can get the result. But I did say it last week, so who knows? I may be wrong again.
One last question for you. News coming through overnight as well that Ronan O'Gara is staying for another 12 months in New Zealand. This is great news for him, his perspective in terms of his involvement with one of the best teams in world rugby. It's like one of the best jobs for a coach who's on his way up, who hasn't quite hit the head coaching role just yet. What's your take / information on this?
Look, he'd been chatting about it for a little while, that it's tough obviously on his wife Jess and the kids, and it's a big move for them, but as regards rugby experience, it's invaluable. The insights he's getting, the way things are done in New Zealand, the information he will gather, he's just building up his portfolio, if you like, his CV. And it's more than just a CV, because he doesn't look at it as I'm going to tick boxes here. He just loves being in that environment. he's a natural fit on the road. Listen, he was like a coach when he played. He picked all the backline moves. He was continuously challenging people around him. So it's a natural fit. And from what I'm hearing, you know, he went there because of his time in Racing and Dan Carter's recommendations, how good he was. And the news coming out of it is they love him, that he's moved in straight away. Since he's been there, the players have really taken to him. And he's not afraid to voice his opinion. That's the one thing about ROG. He wouldn't go in there and be quiet just because there's a number of All Blacks there. I think he's never been afraid to stand up and be vocal. And so they're 9 points clear, Jared, at the top of their conference, the Crusaders. They've only lost 2 games, so their form has been outstanding. And they've had a number of number of injuries and All Blacks away as well. So it's no surprise. And I think it'd probably be a shame to go there just for the 6-7 months and come away when one more season. And I just came thinking Joe Schmidt leaves in 2019, and maybe you might see Ronan O'Gara coming back, being involved with Ireland. But look, I think Joe likes him and he keeps in touch with him. He brought him to America. He could be involved after that with Ireland anyway. I don't know. I know the other coaches signed new contracts recently, but I just think that do another season there. If they win the Super Rugby title, it'll be massive for him. And if he comes back around Europe, I think he'll be in high demand. So I think it's good. We need to get him back to Ireland though soon. Just give him another year there and get him back into the Irish system, because I think he's too good at this stage to have him away too long.
Yeah, my suggestion was that after Joe Schmidt leaves, when Ireland do whatever they do in the World Cup, that the Leinster coaching ticket can take the Ireland job, and then Ronan O'Gara can take the Leinster job.
ROG can go to Leinster, yeah, exactly.
Seems fair.
Yeah, he'd probably get vilified by Munster people, but look, he's out there, he's in the game. Whatever jobs come up, I think you've got to be selfish when you're out of the playing bubble. I've seen that myself. Players you chat to who retire, they realise once you're out of that bubble, you've got to be open to different scenarios. If you want to get in the coaching game, you can't pick and choose. I think if an opportunity, and I know you're trying to rise me there, but if an opportunity comes like that, ROG won't look at it as a Leinster-Munster thing. He'll look at that as, can I win things? Am I going to win trophies? What's the squad like? What's the age profile of the squad? Who am I signing? And that's just the reality of it. But look, at the end of the day, whenever he comes back, I think it's great news for him. And I think all people, everyone in Ireland wishes him well. I hope he gets back into the system in a couple of years, because I think he was, as I said, he was a natural to go into that role as a coach.
Alan, great stuff. Enjoy Melbourne. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.